Welcome to episode 1 of the Virtual CFO. For our first guest, we're excited to have David Bullwinkle, the CFO of Kodak, based right here in Rochester, New York. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Raf. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad you can join us, Dave. Now, for generations, Eastman Kodak Company was a household name in photography, the maker of Kodak moments that preserve families' most cherished memories. In fact, Dave, I don't think there's one person on this planet that doesn't know about Kodak, but people might be surprised to hear what Kodak's up to these days. So I thought, Dave, to get started, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and your role at Kodak?
Sure, of course. Thanks again for having me. Name is David Bullwinkle. I'm resident here in Victor, New York, not very far from Rochester. I have a wife and 3 kids. We very much enjoy the area. Went to school at Geneseo and got my undergrad degree there. My MBA came from St. John Fisher here in the area also. And I grew up actually in the Niagara Falls area in a town called Sanborn, and was left Sanborn to come to Geneseo and just really fell in love with the area. So that's why I'm here in Rochester. Worked out of Geneseo, and my first job was at Coopers & Lybrand in Rochester, New York, before the merger with Price Waterhouse, which of course is now Price Waterhouse Coopers. Spent about 6 years there, and from there went to Bird's Eye Foods, pretty well-known brand, of course, in the frozen food area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was in internal and external reporting there. And then in 2004, came to Kodak and have been challenged ever since. Walking in the door, it's been an incredible experience, really, with all the complexities of, at the time, of course, it was a Fortune 500 company in Rochester, New York, and just really have enjoyed all the experiences I've been able to participate in, I guess. Really have enjoyed learning and growing over that period of time, through all of its challenges and opportunities.
Oh, that's great. It's great background. 2 great schools, especially for accounting here in the greater Rochester area. I'm a Fisher alum, as you know, as well. So Dave, maybe we can start with, what's it been like to reinvent a company like Kodak that's been around for over 100 years?
I guess to say it's been hard would be an understatement. Difficult, hard, whatever word you want to use. There's been a lot of assets for a company that's so rich in tradition and rich in its legacy and certainly its culture. Those are all assets, I believe, of Kodak. If you step back and think about what we were really trying to do, was to really remove ourselves from 100+ year product cycle, and that in and of itself is unusual, if not even unheard of, for a product that has that much longevity to it. And then I'm of course referring to film.
Right.
The commitment of Kodak people, just the work ethic and determination that I've enjoyed has been tremendous. It really is special. When I can recall coming in the door and reading through the values, and the one thing that has always stuck in my mind is that the value of trust and the ability and the value really to count on your counterpart, count on your coworkers to get the job done. Do what you say you're going to do, and really to provide that trust in others. And that's been incredibly refreshing from my experience. Again, since I walked in the door here. The hard parts, of course, are the difficult decisions that have to have been made over that period of time. We've moved a lot of people. Of course, those were all necessary to position us to compete, and that's of course what we needed to do. And of course, to remove ourselves from businesses. You can always look back on it with hindsight and say, well, we shouldn't have done that or should have done that. But, we made choices, our management made choices. And I continue to come back to the way in which the employee base executed on those choices is something to be really proud of. But again, it wasn't always clear that we were in the right positions and in the right choice set.
Right.
I hear an awful lot about the digital camera. Why did Kodak not convert to the digital camera? Well, and I don't know if we could have gained a stronghold in the digital camera space and been the only provider of digital cameras. I don't suspect that would have been true.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that the issue with the digital camera is that you can capture a picture, but what do you do with it? What's the output of it?
Right.
Not people don't generally print digital photos anymore, so you can understand the resistance from the company at that point in time to make that
Sure.
leap into that technology. The company didn't really ever make money on the digital devices, and there's many companies that never really made money on the digital device
Mm-hmm.
until you get up into the high end space. That's just one example of kind of the choices the company made. And I
Right.
think we're now at a point we've got great technology again, and are really converting and transforming an industry and several industries. And where we play right now, we're not really just a film company. We're nowhere near that. We're a print, advanced materials, and chemicals company. And a lot of those things, of course, are what we've always done. But we have really transformed the company to deliver technology again to our customers. And that's what it's all about, of course.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, how has your role in finance influenced all that change over your career?
Well, of course, I started as an SEC reporting manager
Yeah.
in 2004. And my first year end, we had a restatement. So, I think I'd said in my interview, I was looking for a bigger challenge, and I wanted more complexity. And so, of course,
Mm-hmm.
the very first year end, to have to live through a restatement, and a difficult restatement at that, was maybe not exactly what I was talking about when I spoke about a challenge. So certainly, at that level, had not as much influence on management decisions. But
Right.
as I progressed through the years, of course, the focus on attention, the focus on data, of course, that's why, from my perspective, one of finance's key roles, or the finance
Mm-hmm.
team's key roles. And providing that data, making sure that it's a single version of the truth. That's
Mm-hmm.
difficult in an organization that's large, in an organization that has multiple layers of accountability, multiple structures as well. And over the years, we've struggled at that. Is what is the single version of truth?
Mm-hmm.
When you start looking at statutory reporting and management reporting and those sorts of things, that's evolved. That's evolved
Right.
for me personally and for the company. So as I progressed through, got into the FP&A space, that's been the mantra. Is we need to hold people accountable,
Right.
and hold them accountable to the data, such that the data is one version. It doesn't speak different languages in terms of it says what perhaps what the user wants it to say. That's been a difficult challenge, and we're still transforming there,
Yeah.
as we've kind of focused the company on the customer, and on bringing all of our products to the customer rather than a divisional structure, which is more independent, I guess, from your typical centralized organization.
Yeah, it's great. As you mentioned, you started Kodak, I believe, in 2004 as the SEC reporting manager, and I know Kodak has gone through some tough times, including in 2012 when it went through bankruptcy. How was that, and how did you navigate through that period of time?
It's another, I tend to get put into positions for the most difficult portions of them. It's like, I was appointed into the FP&A, the director of FP&A role from a corporate perspective. I think it was the end of 2011. And then, of course, in January of 2012, we declared, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And that was a difficult period of time, and it's very finance centric, of course, because you're dealing with creditors. They really do have control of the company. That's why they kind of call it debtor in possession financing, and that referred to as the DIP. But learned a lot. Obviously, had not been through a bankruptcy before that, and it was incredibly challenging. I think the overall assumption when we entered bankruptcy would be that it would be a quick kind of a quick reorganization based on at the time, as there was a lot of transactions for intellectual property patents where they were selling for crazy amounts of money. That didn't happen for us, mostly because it had been so heavily licensed already at that point.
Okay.
So we learned a lot about kind of how do you pivot, how do you work, how do you work with creditors, how do you work with just other parties in negotiating difficult situations. Ultimately, the way the company removed itself from bankruptcy was we had to shut down some things that we would have preferred to continue, of course, and we had to relinquish a couple of businesses we would have liked to have kept in order to satisfy some pension liabilities, most notably in the UK. That was a creative and unique transaction where we sold a business to the pension plan, basically. Not that doesn't happen every day, and so there was a clear desire, commitment from everybody involved to maintain employment, for our employees, maintain important businesses to the industries we were participating in, and to help the company emerge from bankruptcy, which happened kind of September of 2013. So a good solid kind of, I guess, what would that be? 20 months of bankruptcy. Typically, it's much shorter than that. And from a CFO perspective, I often joke about it, but it is really true that lots of companies can't afford to go bankrupt. The level of consultants and lawyers and accountants that you need to have to advise you through a very complex process is absolutely staggering. I think we paid and spent in excess of $150 million on consultant fees and things like that, which that it speaks volumes in terms of the complexity that exists at Kodak, and certainly the complexity of the process in kind of the American business system.
Yeah, also speaks to the willingness of Kodak to basically, invest in the future and essentially reinvent itself.
Yeah, absolutely. We emerged with pretty much with the businesses we have today, give or take a couple.
Yeah.
And I can, again, it just goes back to we're still that print, advanced materials and chemicals company, and we're well on the road to transforming that into a growing company as well.
And speaking of that, I know there's been some news of Kodak becoming involved in pharma, but more so as an ancillary opportunity to help with the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about Kodak's thought processing and getting into the pharma business?
Sure. So when we started into the COVID pandemic, we as a management team, we recognized that in these types of crises are opportunities to, in some ways, reinvent yourselves, or to find new opportunities where you can be successful. We of course had stepped back and we had made some difficult decisions to take pay reductions at the management levels, to furlough employees in manufacturing areas where volumes were incredibly low, given the impacts of the pandemic. But then we're thinking about, well, what are we going to be when we come out the other side of this? Pretty quickly, we became important to the hand sanitizers from the state perspective, and we're providing IPA, or isopropyl alcohol, as a material into that process. That's something that the company has done for a long time, and recovering IPA from various materials in our solvent recovery business, which is kind of core to the company.
Right.
That was a relatively easy one. Because of our customers' needs, we also started to make face shields with our S-Star product. That's our film base, basically.
Right.
And to provide that for free to customers. We were then looking at what else can we do with our chemical processes. We had been talking and investigating the pharmaceutical area more from a what would we need to do to become a GMP compliant provider, GMP being good manufacturing processes, which is required by the FDA to produce pharmaceuticals. We have for several years prior to the pandemic been making KSMs, unregulated KSMs. That's how we can make them without those good manufacturing processes, because they're unregulated. They're so standard and so low risk that there's no regulation around them. KSM is a key starting material, and it really is a chemical process. It sounds strange to be talking about pharmaceuticals as chemicals,
Right.
but really that's what it is, and it's not chemicals in a negative sense, of course. It's having the ability for these batch reactors to create a chemical reaction on either small or large basis. The process of film involves multiple different components and materials coated onto film. So the way in which film is manufactured requires many different materials to be mixed in batches or in kind of reactors. And so the company has those assets available to it, and we had been reutilizing those assets for the KSM. What became apparent was, because of the supply chain, there's reliance on overseas production to create pharmaceuticals in the U.S. So generic and branded drugs are produced using a lot of these materials, or key starting materials, that are produced in areas of the world where it's not always clear that there will be an unlimited supply or a supply from those areas. So we saw that as an opportunity, became involved in some of the early RFPs for low supply of drugs or low supply of materials, and really just started working our way through that, responding to the RFPs. At some point, we became noticed by the administration and by the U.S. government as an area that we have a lot of capacity, we have a lot of infrastructure that could support significant scale, and from that it kind of mushroomed from there in terms of the level of scale that we were talking about. So it's still a very valid argument that a chemical company can do some pharmaceutical work. And we were never in the position where we wanted, and still don't want, to change Kodak into a pharmaceutical company. We will be a print, advanced materials, and chemicals company that does some pharma. We continue to explore it. I think the issues surrounding the loan application, or the right to apply for a loan with the government and the DFC, is pretty well documented. And we intend to continue to pursue that, and to utilize that, to use our assets. That's a lot of what we're doing at Eastman Business Park, is finding new ways to utilize our assets. And we find different things almost every week where, oh geez, I didn't realize we had that. Whether it's the pharmaceutical opportunity, or coating machines. We do a lot of roll-to-roll manufacturing. There's a lot of applications there where we can coat different things on on various substrates. That's an opportunity for us. We've got we've got the ability to automate storage for paper rolls. So are there, the coating paper and those sorts of things, which is key to our print business, is another opportunity. So there's just a few examples of the different ways in which we want to reutilize those assets at Eastman Business Park.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of Eastman Business Park, I mean, that's where all the magic happened. And it'd be great if you can talk a little bit about how massive that park was at one point in time and how it's evolved over the years to today.
Yeah, I've only really been involved for the last couple of years, and so it is a little bit overwhelming to think about how utilized the park was at one point over a long period of time. It helps to put in perspective how incredible that film product was. The park itself is 1,200 acres, which it sounds easy to say, but it's bigger than Central Park in New York. You could put several Empire State Buildings in terms of the square footage available in the Empire State Building in the park, and we've got access to water right out of the lake, Lake Ontario. We have an industrial sewer. We've got again that solvent recovery operation. We've got its own utility infrastructure and utility generation facility where we can supply natural gas, electricity, steam, all sorts of different steam to any user. So the infrastructure itself has really been invested in, and that's why it's a great area for startup manufacturing. Of course, at some point we had every square inch of the place had a building on it, and over time we've removed those kind of special purpose buildings that were really not suitable for utilizing as kind of more standard manufacturing space. So we've got probably about 200 acres still that could be developed, and the rest is occupying additional space. We've I think done a pretty good job of attracting new users into Eastman Business Park. Our core areas are really food production. You'll see that with Ledestra Foods there. Energy production or energy businesses. Life Cycle is building at Eastman Business Park. We've got a number of other companies in the solar and the battery space that have done work there, and of course, batteries is a good opportunity for roll-to-roll manufacturing because that involves coating aluminum and copper foil, and we intend to play in that space. Of course, the other areas that are good where you need a lot of water, a lot of steam, fermentation type applications is another area that we're pretty excited about, and of course, then chemical production. We've got, as I mentioned, solvent recovery processes. We've got the permitting that exists for the most part. So there's a great deal fewer barriers to entry into manufacturing at Eastman Business Park, given all the investment the company has made there for years and years. And so that footprint has evolved. Of course, we've sold off some of the perimeter assets and buildings, which are more general purpose buildings, and are really focused on how can we utilize the park, kind of to the best use of those assets. When I first started there I think it was about 3 years ago, to become more responsible directly for Eastman Business Park, I think we had occupancy in somewhere in vacancy rather, around 30%. And we're now having conversations around, do we provide a tenant with this space, or do I maintain the space and utilize it as a Kodak business opportunity for our own manufacturing? So that chemical manufacture is really starting to pick up at Eastman Business Park, and I expect the company to reutilize those assets just as much as tenants are, as opposed to shrinking Kodak's business and growing the tenant space there. So it's very exciting to be part of.
Great.
Some of the other things that we've enjoyed is the Kodak Center, which is a completely different from manufacture. I know we've got the almost a 2,000 seat theater there on Ridge Road. We've got a visitor center we put in a few years ago that celebrates the history of the company. It's free to the public, assuming that the COVID restrictions allow the public to enter and to look at it. We've got just a number of other opportunities there to be more public facing and invite the community back into Kodak, which has been a nice thing to work on, rewarding in order to just remind people of the rich history here, educate them of what we're doing today, and obviously to generate some excitement about the future of Kodak.
That's great. That's great. I know our very own Paychex founder, Tom Golisano, has agreed to invest, I think, $100 million or so into Kodak. What will the investment be used for, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we're incredibly excited to have the opportunity to work with Mr. Golisano and his team. The investment was part of a series of transactions that kind of recapitalized the company. We were able to attract in a new term loan and address some maturities that were coming up in 2021. So we've replaced a preferred stock of $200 million with a term loan and with two new series of preferred stock, a Series B and a Series C preferred stock. The Grand Oaks Capital, which is Mr. Golisano's fund, is investing $100 million in Series C preferred stock that is convertible at certain price levels of the stock, and that has a term on it of 5 years and 5 years and a quarter, so 5 years and 91 days. It picks the dividend into additional shares of common, which is very helpful for the company from a cash flow perspective. And we'll utilize the funds for growth opportunities. And those growth areas, we haven't been very public about them quite yet, but they're in the areas of print, the advanced materials and chemicals, including some of these new initiatives that we've talked about and disclosed publicly. You've mentioned one with respect to the pharmaceutical opportunity. We're going to continue to explore that. Again, we already produce unregulated KSM, so we're talking about expansion of that. We have other opportunities. Our light blocking materials that we've got into a product called Kodaks is an area that we expect to expand. And then, of course, there'll be new areas that we've not yet really disclosed. And we're also open to acquisition and merger opportunities and those sorts of things in order to position the company again to have a growing business, create sustainable employment for the next generation of Kodakers. Right. So we're very excited about it. Mr. Golisano is incredibly important to the Rochester community, and we believe Kodak is important to the Rochester community as well, of course. And so we expect it to be a really beneficial partnership to increasing employment in Rochester.
Well, that's great. Sounds like this opportunity will bring more opportunities and growth to the Rochester area, which will be helpful. For sure. So you've been through a lot, Dave, a lot of experience, a lot of challenging times, a lot of fun times as well. Based on all these years of experience, and what do you think makes a good leader?
My view of being a good leader is being real, being transparent with people, being honest. Every one of us has had somebody who's tried to spin us on something. I kind of equate that to the kind of the used car salesman. Somebody tries to tell you that it's either not that important, or this is really good and this is how, kind of that spin. And I find, again, in my experience, that lacks credibility. And it also, from my perspective, would make me question, well, do they really know what they're talking about if, they're trying to convince me this is a good thing?
Yeah.
I I value somebody who's honest. I think I think at Kodak, our leaders now are, we share everything with each other. No one's trying to hide anything, and we're very transparent. Um, Jim, Continenza, our executive chairman, who I regard as a very good leader, is very honest with people. I think I'm very honest with people also. I'd rather tell you the facts and provide to you the data, and then let's have a discussion about what are we going to do with it. That's a whole nother conversation. How do we create this as an opportunity? How do we make something good happen out of perhaps what might be viewed as a negative situation? I could get into the, obviously a leader is somebody who rolls up their hands when they, they'll roll up their sleeves rather when they need to, all those different things. But ultimately it comes down to just, kind of a practice what you preach, type of thing. It's the stuff that, my parents told me as a kid, you reward hard work. And I respect leaders who do that. I respect leaders who work hard and reward hard work. I think somebody who's willing to be open-minded and listen to their people is also very important. Again, I've been blessed with a great team here at Kodak over the years, incredibly committed set of leaders and set of employees who maybe don't have all the right answers, but are really want to see it be successful and see us get the job done. So I guess again the key characteristic of a good leader for me is honesty, integrity, relying on the data to guide us or to guide that leader. Again, separate from what do we do with that? How do we create an opportunity? The really special leaders are people who can look at that and then create opportunities out of difficult situations. I think we've got that here at Kodak. I think the turning point for me in terms of hey, we're actually going to be able to do this was when Jim Continenza stepped into the role 2 years ago. We were able to pretty quickly create a clear vision, and every organization needs that. We were going to monetize the packaging business. We were going to get a loan for the stub, and then we were going to work on removing the additional debt, and that's exactly what we did. Now we're into that kind of, maybe not the last phase, but closer to the last phase on a transformation around how do you create that growing company? We have some great businesses, some incredible technology, participating in portions of the industry that are not growing rapidly. In print, traditional print is an area where it's in the printing plates and the chemicals around it. It'll always be there, or certainly will be there for a long time. But it reduces at about 4% every year. The digital print side is very exciting, and we have great technologies there. There is growth there as the conversion occurs from offset to digital, and as opposed to the film film transition from film to digital. There wasn't a lot of profit on the digital side. In this, there's that ink and service profit on the digital side, which is very exciting. One very interesting example is inkjet printing on flexible packaging. That has not been done in the past, but with any reliability. And we've created a press with a partner that will do that. It allows you to print inkjet printing on film. If you think about it, it's kind of we've got water-based inks. The film is oil-based, so you're literally mixing oil and water, and that doesn't happen. So the way in which you treat that material is how we've unlocked that that value. And So you get into kind of packaging, you start to think about what's the world, what's the world economy doing?
Hmm.
Again, absent COVID, packaging is going to grow. I think that's a pretty common sense type of argument.
Hmm.
So that's a great place for Kodak to play with kind of innovative technology, and our inkjet technology is really second to none. So we're very excited about that, and that's an example of really recognizing that, and kind of being more aggressive in our investment there than where we were headed previously.
That's great, Dave. You've shared with us a lot of great information thus far, and I guess we'll wrap it up by finally asking you, what advice would you give other financial leaders?
I tell people, hard work is something you can't replace. There are no shortcuts. You need to put in the work. You need to put in the effort. You need to study the data. You need to study your industry. You need to become really a business expert, not just a financial expert. That's to me what's allowed for my success. Obviously, some of that is opportunity,
Right.
but being open to new opportunities is also very important. When I first took over the FP&A role, I didn't view myself as a finance professional. I viewed myself as an accountant or a controller, but I was willing to put in the effort. I was willing to learn. I was willing to develop myself. So I invested in myself, and I took on that role. Investor relations was similar when I had that opportunity. Didn't think I had any special ability to communicate, with people. But I grew from every single one of those things, and ultimately, obviously reached my goal of CFO of Kodak, which I'm really proud to say today. So I guess that's what I would tell somebody is just focus on the opportunities and be willing to put in the work.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate your time today, Dave, and thank you so much for being our first guest on the virtual CFO. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Raf. I really appreciate the ability to be the inaugural speaker.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
great to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.